guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be tier ranking all of my 5-star reads. Alright guys, so I posted a survey over on my Instagram asking you what types of videos you would like to see on my channel, and a few of you recommended doing a 5-star tier rank video where I take all of the books that I rated 5 stars and see if they still hold up, if they are still a perfect 5-star read, or if I've changed my mind. And honestly, there were a lot more books that I've changed my mind on than I thought there were going to be. So I'm very excited about this video, and thank you guys so much for suggesting this video idea. And if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's tier rank my 5-star reads. All right, guys, welcome to the tier rank. So first up, I'm gonna go over all of the different tiers. So the top tier is Perfection. This book is absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it yet, you need to read it, and it is just perfection. Then the next tier is Stand By My Rating. Not everyone might rate this 5 stars, but for me, I loved it. I stand by my 5-star rating. Next up, we have Still Love It, but maybe not 5-star. I might have been a little too hasty with my rating. Then we have This Doesn't Hold Up. This one, it's probably gonna be rated like a 3-star. I might have been like in a really good mood while I was reviewing it, or like something like that. And then last up is What Was I Thinking? And there are a couple in here that I don't know what I was thinking. So let's get started. So starting off, we have Butcher and Blackbird. If you are unfamiliar, this is a serial killer romance. It is probably my favorite rom-com. I am not a fan of rom-com romances. And while this is very dark and has an entire page of trigger warnings, it still feels very rom-com. And I stand by my rating. 5 stars. I loved this book. It was so unique. We're following these 2 vigilante serial killers that end up having this like meet cute when they go to kill the same person. And then they end up making this deal where every year they will compete to try to kill a serial killer before the other one does. And it was just fun, and it had so many nods to like classic serial killers like Hannibal Lecter and stuff like that. And I loved it. So I stand by my 5-star. I love that book. All right, so next up we have June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. So this is one that I'm gonna say I still love it. I don't know if it holds up to a 5-star rating. I think this book is super emotional, and like I couldn't not rate it 5 stars because the amount of times I found myself crying. Like I had to pull over on 295. If you're not familiar with New Jersey, that's like a major highway, because I was crying and couldn't see. Like, it's very upsetting, a lot of parts. If you're unfamiliar with June 1st, it's been a while since I read it. We're following this boy who ends up having to live with his friend's family, and his friend's family have just had a little girl, and he becomes very, very close with her, despite the fact that he is now her stepbrother, and they eventually have this romance. But oh my gosh, the main character in this goes through it. So probably not 5-star. It was probably a 4-star. So I still love it, but not a 5-star read. Okay, this next one, I understand what I was thinking, but also, what was I thinking? I'm not gonna put in what was I thinking, because I knew what I was thinking. I'm gonna put in, this doesn't hold up. So I think the reason I rated A Soul of Ash and Blood 5 stars when I first finished it is because I was terrified to read that book. I haven't been loving the Jennifer L. Armentrout From Blood and Ash series as much as when the first few books were being released, and they've kind of been a chore, and I feel like this book really helped me fall back in love with Poppy and Cass. If you're unfamiliar with A Soul of Ash and Blood, it is a kind of prequel to From Blood and Ash, except we're getting Castiel's perspective instead of Poppy's. And it made me love the characters again. So I was like, oh my gosh, this book is so good. It's a 5-star read. But honestly, it was fine. Like, it wasn't amazing. It wasn't stand out. So it's probably closer to like a 4-star, 3.5 star. But it just made me love the series again, and I needed that. So that is why I put it at 5. All right, next up is Gothicana. I feel weird saying it's a 5-star, but also like those gothic vibes were perfect. I think I'm gonna say I stand by my rating because it has everything I love. So it is I just realized I was not in focus this entire time. That stinks. It has that like gothic charm. It also has a taboo student-teacher romance, which I love age gap romances. So we're following, if you're unfamiliar with the plot, we're following this girl that ends up getting a letter that she's been accepted to this university. And when she gets there, she finds out it's like this gothic mansion. And she has a relationship with the head guy at the university. And then there's like mysterious things happening. And the main guy has like a Dracula type feel. And I just really enjoyed it. So it stands by my 5-star. I loved that book. All right, this next one, The Ballad of Never After. Perfection. That is one of those books I will hear no criticism on. I love it. Jax is amazing. The angst, the world, like it feels like you're stepping into a fairy tale. And The Ballad of Never After lives rent-free in my mind. I love it so much. However, I didn't give A Curse for True Love, which is the next book, 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars. But what was I thinking giving that book 4 stars? Now that it's been quite a while since I've read it, and also now that I've talked to my friend Isa from Fun Fantasy Books, we actually did a live show. And while we were like talking about it, I realized that this book left so many questions unanswered and was just not at the standard of the first 2 books in that series. I would rate, honestly, A Curse for True Love 2.5 stars at this point. Just because I'm happy that we got an ending, but they didn't explain anything. Like, it was somehow too convenient with its explanations, but also didn't cover everything. And it's very hard to explain this without giving away spoilers, guys. But overall, yeah, what was I thinking giving that 4 stars? That was not a 4-star read at all. Next up is is it Blood and Ashes? A Heart of Blood and Ashes by Milla Vaine. This is also going straight up to perfection, mostly because the heroine in this book is such a badass and one of my favorite heroines in fantasy romance. She is just so strong and she uses her intellect and I love her. I love her so much. So if you're unfamiliar with A Heart of Blood and Ashes, we're following this barbarian, there's a barbarian tribe, and the guy that's leading the tribe finds out that his parents have been killed. So he believes he knows who's responsible, and he goes to confront them only to find their daughter actually there. And he is going to kill their daughter, but she's like, hey, I hate my father too. How about we work together? And at first he kind of takes her as a prisoner, but it kind of slowly turns into more. And like I said, the main girl is just amazing. So that 100% is staying in perfection. One of my favorite fantasy romances. Maestro by Auden Dar. This is hard. I'm going to say I stand by my rating, but I will say it was predictable. And I still loved it. I loved the angst. I loved everything that was happening. But I remember as I was reading it, I was voice memoing Cheyenne from the channel That Tall Book Girl because I was reading this because of a collab video we were doing. And I kept guessing what was going to happen. And then I'd think, oh no, I'm wrong. Like they've given evidence that what I'm guessing isn't correct. But then at the end, I found out like everything I was guessing was 100% right. So I wish it wasn't quite as predictable, but overall the story is so good. And if you like A Love Letter to Whiskey, I think this one is better. I think it is done. I just think the angst is better and you get more of a payoff. And I definitely would pick Maestro over A Love Letter to Whiskey. So I'm going to say I stand by my rating, still 5-star. I just think it's a little bit predictable. Okay, this next one is tough. So we have The Will of the Many. I'm going to say I stand by my rating. However, I feel like the ending of that book is open to so much interpretation, and I have gone on like hour-long discussions with people on how that book ended and what that ending means. So, you know what? Is it perfect? No, I'm not going to put perfect, because I do think there are pacing issues. So The Will of the Many is actually, it's not fantasy romance, it is straight fantasy. It is pretty dense. If you like, it kind of feels similar to Harry Potter in some aspects, but also other fantasy books. We're essentially following, this is a very chaotic explanation, but we're following this character who ends up having to join this school to kind of work his way up the ranks. And in doing so, he finds out, or he's trying to uncover this plot that is going on. And there is this scene in this book, if you are a fan of ACOTAR, and if you are watching this channel, I assume you are, where in ACOWAR, Rhys is able to, like, mist people by, like, snapping his fingers and they turn to mist. That happens in this book, but in great detail. Like, so much gory detail, and I just was not expecting it, and I was listening to this book in a car ride with my husband, and we both turned to each other and were like, what is happening? But yeah, overall, this was great. I can't wait for the sequel to come out. I'm going to read that the day it releases. But yeah, I'm going to say I stand by my rating, 5-star. I just feel like that ending, I need to know. All right, so next up we have a little complicated. This one I'm going to say, still love it. Maybe not a 5-star read. I think I read it and I was really, I was going through a reading slump, and when I read this, I read it in one sitting, and I'm like, my reading slump is over, and I think that is why I gave this 5 stars. Honestly, probably a 4-star read. I still really enjoyed it, but there were some problems I saw with the romances. This is following a girl that has a relationship with her friend who is a twin. They end up breaking up, and then she starts dating the other twin, but still harbors feelings for the first twin. And there's a lot of other stuff that happens. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I think 4 stars, still good, just not a 5-star read. All right, so now we have, I don't know why they're separate, Binding and Keeping 13. I am going to put Binding 13 with I stand by my rating, and Keeping 13 with perfection, because Keeping 13 is one of my top reads of the year, and it was just so good. They are both books in the Boys of Tommen series, and I am currently working my way through that series, and I am loving it. So yeah, I think that was 100%. They are both 5-star reads. Okay, Anastasia. This is hard. So with Anastasia, why does my camera not want to focus? Okay. With Anastasia, I still love it, but maybe not a 5-star. This is probably the most controversial and the most, I wasn't sure about where I was going to place a book. I loved Anastasia, and I think I was really worried about picking it up because so many of my friends had mixed reviews, and a lot of people said the pacing was really slow, and honestly, totally agree. That book is very slow paced, but I think it's done on purpose for us to really fall in love with all of the characters. My gripe isn't with the pacing. My gripe is with the very end uses a trope that I can't stand, especially with emotional fantasy. I just felt like it really took away from the book. So it's still an amazing book, highly recommend, still one of my favorites of the year. But honestly, I might give it 4 stars just because I hate the way the ending happened, and I hate the trope that was utilized to make the ending happen, if that makes any sense. If you want to know what I'm talking about and you don't mind spoilers, message me and I will tell you exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, overall though, I think you should definitely pick it up if you haven't yet, especially if you like the Anastasia movie. This book was so good. All right, next up is House of Eating Wings. This does not hold up, and I don't know why I rated it 4 stars. Like, I actually did a double take when I went on Goodreads, because I remember finishing it and being like, well, that wasn't what I expected. It wasn't bad. But if you asked me to recount what happens in that book, could not do it. Could not tell you. I know that it had, like, an Italian influence, and I remember the main character was either Fae or human, but whichever one she was, the rest of her community looked down on her for it. And there were magic water beasts, and there was a prince who was kind of a dick, and then she had to collect ravens. That's all I remember. So I'm going to say it doesn't hold up. However, a lot of people love this series, so if you're thinking about picking it up, definitely check it out. Don't let my opinion sway you, but I wasn't a huge fan. Okay, this is another one. Between Hello and Goodbye, that I think I let the fact that it made me cry dictate how I rated it. So I'm going to say I still love Between Hello and Goodbye. However, I don't know if it's a 5-star read. So this was a very emotional read. We're following a woman who lives, I believe, in New York City, and she ends up going to Hawaii because she needs to, like, get away and find herself. And when she gets there, she meets this firefighter who is living in Hawaii, and they have this romance, and then it ends up going long distance, and it's essentially how hard long distance relationships are. But I don't know, it wasn't like a standout. Like, if I think about rereading The Ballad of Ever After, Heart of Blood and Ashes, or the Boys Atonement series, like, I get excited. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to reread these books. I have no interest to reread Between Hello and Goodbye. It was fine. It just wasn't amazing. Next up, we have A Court of Blood and Bindings, and I'm going to say I stand by my rating. It is a 5-star read. I've had some friends that haven't loved it. They said it's really similar to ACOTAR. I kind of disagree. I don't think it has that many similarities, and I love the magic system, and I love Creon with all of my heart, and I need to protect my baby, and he is the best. But yeah, overall, I stand by my rating. I love A Court of Blood and Bindings, one of my fave fantasy romances. Also, Between Wrath and Mercy. Stand by my rating. I loved that book. I loved the more mature characters. Normally with fantasy romance, we're following like 16 and 17-year-olds. I love that we were following more mature adults that used critical thinking skills, and the world was great. The writing was great. Still haven't read the second book. I swear I will. I just keep seeing mixed reviews, and I keep pushing it on my TBR, but I will read it at some point. Hopefully in February. We will see. This next one I'm going to move over because I want to do all of those together. All right, Dismount by Lucia Franco, 100% stand by my rating. I love the Off Balance series, and I just thought this ending was perfect. I feel like a lot of those longer series, when it comes to contemporary romance or taboo romance, the endings are always a bit of a letdown. Like, I just don't like where the series goes, but somehow every single book in the Off Balance series, I loved, even though they were messy and toxic. But Dismount, I just feel like it ended so well. So stand by my rating. Lucia Franco, you can do no wrong. Okay, Ensnared. This one I'm gonna put with still love it, maybe not a 5-star, and that is because the audiobook for the second and third book have been out for a while, and I haven't felt the need to continue. I do want to continue, I just have so many other books on my TBR that feel like a higher priority that I keep putting this off, which makes me think that maybe I didn't love that first book quite as much as I originally thought when I read it. Still really enjoyed it. Still really good. I never thought I would rate a spider romance 5 stars, and although I'm not saying 5 stars, I'm now saying probably 4 stars, it's still a spider romance that I'm rating 4 stars. Like, think about that. So, yeah, I do want to continue with the series eventually, and hopefully I will in probably March or April, around then. All right, Heartless Heathens. I stand by my rating. It is dark, it is gothic, has those Hunchback of Notre Dame vibes, why choose romance, post-apocalyptic kind of. I loved everything about this. It was just great. Completely stand by my rating. A lot of my friends have absolutely hated it. That is totally okay. I still really loved it. So it's definitely not going to be for everyone, but for me, it worked. Heartless is going straight to perfection. You cannot tell me, you cannot criticize that book. I love that book so much. If you're unfamiliar with Heartless, it is a nanny, single dad, age gap romance with cowboys. It is part of the, oh my gosh, I forget the name of that series, by Elsie Silver, the Elsie Silver Cowboy series. So I read the first book, Flawless, and I hated it. And then I waited a few months. I ended up picking up Heartless, and then I binged the rest of the series, and they were all 4-star reads, besides Heartless, which was 5 stars, because I loved it. There's humor, there's spice, there's emotion. It's so good. All right. Next up with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing was hard. But you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to say I'm putting it with perfection because I loved it. It had been quite a while since I felt completely captivated by a book like I did when I read ACOTAR and Tog for the first time. It gave me those butterflies and those feelings. So I'm going to say Fourth Wing, perfect. I loved it. I know there's a lot of people out there that are not fans. That is okay. Now, I will say Iron Flame, similar to A Curse of True Love, I gave it 4 stars. What was I thinking? Okay, so I still liked Iron Flame. I still enjoyed it. I still probably enjoyed it most than the majority of people that read it and were really disappointed. I do think it is very much a setup book for the next book in this series, so I honestly don't even want to read it until I get that third book and see what was important and what wasn't important, because I do think the pacing was pretty slow. So as it is now, without that next book, I would probably rate it a 3-star, maybe a 3.5, definitely not a 4-star, which is what I originally rated it. So probably like 3.75. Let's go with 3.75. Yeah, And I think when I first finished it, I was like 4.5. Really, what was I thinking there? Because definitely not that. Okay, next up is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Now, the issue with Hellbent is I forget 90% of this book. I think that was one of the first books I read in 2023. So I'm going to say I still love it, but maybe not a 5-star, because I do love the fact that Leigh Bardugo kind of went back to like her heist roots like she did with Six of Crows. This very much felt like a heist, but a heist against like demons, and I was living for that. However, I forget a lot, and I'll definitely have to do a reread before the third book comes out. So I'm going to say I still loved it, but just maybe not 5-star love. Maybe like 4-star love. Next up is Love in a Time of Zombie Apocalypse. That is going straight to perfection. That book is amazing. So much action. It's essentially what would happen if a zombie virus was released upon the world and then humans found out that wizards exist and they had to work together to stop this virus, but also humans prejudice. So some of the wizards were killing humans and humans are killing wizards. And it was such a fun read. It is insanely long. It took me a very long time to finish it, but still so good. And I actually like Draco from Love in a Time of Zombie Apocalypse more than Draco from Manacled. And Manacled is next, and Manacled is going straight to perfection. I'm so happy this book has grown in popularity. So many more people are reading it. I want to thank Jen from the Book Refuge because she asked me to be part of a fan fiction readathon. And I had already read Manacled, but that's the reason I read Love in a Time of Zombie Apocalypse. And just so good. Definitely check trigger warnings. I also have a spoiler-free reading vlog of me reading Manacled. I'll leave in the cards and in the description if you guys want to check that out. All right, next up is Order of the Scorpions. I am standing by my rating. I feel like no one talks about this book, and it is a wide choose fantasy romance. It's also super dark, and the heroine is just such a badass, and I love it. It is very chunky. It's a pretty long book, but it's a standalone, and I feel like because it's wide choose, I actually appreciate the fact that it's longer because it gave us enough time to fall in love with all of the different guys. So I stand by my rating, 5 stars. More people need to read Order of the Scorpions. Okay, out on a limb. I'm also gonna put with, I still love it, maybe not 5-star, and that is because I have talked about this book with people, and I've now looked at reviews now that I finished it, and I do agree with the fact that two people who have only known each other for a very short time after sleeping together in a one-night stand, how are they able to communicate so effectively? Like, I have never seen two people not have any sort of miscommunication, and I hate the miscommunication trope, but just like a little bit. I don't know, I just felt a little bit too easy for them to find out their parents and co-parent. But besides that, I loved the book. So I would say I would probably end up giving it a 4.5. Still an amazing read and highly recommend. It's one of my favorite books of last year, regardless of the whole communication thing, but still really good. Next up is Home Game by Odette Stone. I really liked this. So I was gonna say that I was gonna put it in maybe not a 5-star because it was the first hockey romance that I really enjoyed, and I feel like that's why I rated it 5 stars, because I never thought I would love a hockey romance. However, I'm thinking back, I remember most of the book, and I enjoyed it. So I'm actually gonna say I stand by my rating. This is a 5-star read. I haven't continued with the series, but this one in particular was really good. All right, so the reason I put all of these in here is because I 100% am saying all of the perfectly imperfect mafia romance books are perfection, and everyone needs to read this mafia romance series. I have not disliked a single book in this series. I read them all in one sitting. I love every single character. They are just so good. So please, if you have not read the perfectly imperfect mafia romance series, you need to pick it up. I am desperately waiting for the rest of them to come out via audio. I've listened to up to where they have come out. I'm pretty sure the last one was book 5. But please, I need the rest of those audios because I love this series so much. It also has disability and chronic illness representation, and it's so good. All right. Next up is Rush. And honestly, I'm going to say it doesn't hold up, and that is 100% because of Maestro. And I read Rush before I read Maestro, and I thought it was so good. I love the story, I love the romance, and then I read Maestro, and Maestro was next level. It was like all of the parts of Rush I liked, but like expanded upon. So I'm gonna say it doesn't hold up in comparison with Maestro. So I would probably give it 3.754 star. Like, I loved it. I love the romance. It's just Maestro was next level. All right, Serpent and the Wings of Night, stand by my rating. Oops, not perfection. I'm going to stand by my rating because I do see people talk about the issues they have with this book. I love the fact that it just drops you into this fantasy world, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm going to say stand by my rating. However, I am going to do a reread of Serpent and the Wings of Night in February, so we'll see if my score changes, if I end up changing my rating, but I don't know. We'll see. And Six Scorched Roses, 100% perfection, favorite novella of all time. If you have not read it yet, please read it. It is so, so good, and I can't believe a author was able to make a novella feel slow burn. Like, that romance feels so just kiss already, and the book is only like 100 pages. So definitely vampire romance. If you are a fan, pick up Six Scorched Roses. I loved it. All right, Soul Eater. I'm standing by my 5-star rating. I loved that book. It is a monster romance. It's probably my favorite monster romance, and highly, highly recommend the audiobook. The audiobook narrator does such a good job. The guy in here has a southern accent, and at first when I was listening to the audio, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But after listening to a while, I can't imagine him not having that accent. Like, they do such a good job. But it is a male-male monster romance, and I loved it. Danny lives in my heart. So good. And when the monster is like, he's portrayed as being like super evil and bad, but also he's such a softie, and I just loved their romance. All right, The Coven is very much going into a what was I thinking. Still love it. Still recommend it. However, yeah, there are a lot of issues with it. Also, the fact that no one knew how old the main character was, and it took like 3 of us to figure out that the main character is in fact not like 16, like a lot of people thought. She's actually, I'm pretty sure, in her early 20s. So that made the book a little bit better after I found that out, because at first I gave it 5 stars. Then I saw a lot of people taking issue with the fact that the main character was younger, and for some reason when I read it, I thought she was in her 20s. And then I was like, oh God, no, I don't like that. But it turns out she is in her 20s. So that issue was resolved. However, there's a lot going on, and I feel like I think it's mostly the writing. I love this story. The writing was just kind of hard to follow, and I definitely have to do a reread before I read the sequel. So I'm also kind of annoyed at the fact that I purchased special editions for this book, and then the author came out and said she's not going to be making the sequel doing the same special edition, so I'm going to have a bunch of mismatching books, and that kind of annoys me. But either way, definitely not a 5-star, probably a 3.75 star, but I'm still going to continue. And next up, we have The Summer We Fell, and honestly, I'm standing by my rating. This author, Elizabeth O'Rourke, I have a love or hate relationship. Some of her books I really enjoy, like Parallel, and The Summer We Fell is by far my favorite by her. But then there are other ones, like Waking Olivia. I did not enjoy that book. So I was nervous to pick this up, but then I saw Jess from Peace Love Books was talking about it. It has a love triangle, and I'm so happy I gave this a chance. I loved this book, and highly, highly recommend. I'll definitely be continuing with this series. I think she has a few more books coming out that also follow different guys that are living like in this area. And last up, we have Unbreak My Heart. Straight to perfection. This book was a roller coaster of emotions. I went from despising the main love interest to wanting the best for him, to wanting to throat punch him, to loving him. It was all over the place, and I feel like this was such a realistic account of like what would happen if you were put in the same circumstance that our main character was put in. I know that didn't make any sense because I can't talk spoilers, but we're essentially following this girl that has a foster brother that she has a crush on, but her foster brother ends up marrying her college roommate, and then she helps take care of their kids when he ends up going and is deployed. So then the roommate, Rachel, ends up passing away, and when the guy comes back from deployment, he ends up having a one-night stand with our main character, and she gets pregnant. And it's their story of having to co-parent, also take care of these children with the children from her foster brother and the college roommate, And also their relationship, and it is just so messy, but also so unbelievably good. So 100%, Staying in Perfection, 5-star read. I loved it. So yeah, anyway, I'm so happy I did this tier rank because there was definitely a decent amount of books that I ended up changing my rating on, which I was not expecting. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. All right, guys, that is it for my tier rank. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you all who suggested video ideas. If there are any other videos you'd like to see on my channel, please let me know down in the comments below. And I'd also like to say a huge thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda and Erin. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!